This is What's Wild in New Hampshire by wildlife biologist Eric Orp. Hey, I'm with John Kanter. We're up at Fishing Game headquarters simply because we met here, because I was just talking to Becky Futa, the New Hampshire Fishing Game's deer biologist. But here's John. John Kanter worked here a while in the non-game program, but where do you work now, John? And what's your title, and what are we going to talk about today?
Well, after 25 years here, helping to grow the non-game and endangered species program, I figured it was time to go to Washington, D.C. And see what I could do to help out there. And so I work for National Wildlife Federation now.
As I do.
Yeah. So
we've teamed up this morning.
That's right.
The National Wildlife Federation. Here's the team. Team New Hampshire.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm serve as a senior wildlife biologist there at National Wildlife Federation. So directing traffic, keeping the science into the work that we're doing on policy and education and outreach.
So this morning we got an important bill we're going to talk about that's up for passage, and you just reminded me we have both been working on it for a long time. Far less for me, but now and then you can't help but pitch in here and there. But there's a lot of the folks have been carrying the water a long time, and it's been a long time. Give us some history.
Yeah, well, I remember going to the first conference in 1994 called Bridge to the Future.
Okay.
Naomi Edelson put that on. She's now with National Wildlife Federation too. And it's been leading a charge because we need to complete this model of funding for state-based conservation. Wildlife conservation primarily funded through hunting and fishing licenses and excise taxes on sporting equipment, which leaves out a piece of the puzzle, and that is much of the wildlife is not hunted, fished, or trapped. We call it non-game, but songbirds, reptiles, amphibians, they're all part of our heritage, and so we've been working on getting federal funding to help the states, to work on the full breadth of all wildlife.
We're talking 300 plus bird species and a couple dozen more reptiles and amphibians. So it's the glue that sticks everything together.
That's a good way. Yeah, it is. Whether you call it the food web, the part of the food web. It's the foundation of the building. And of course, many of us just love to. I'm a big time bird watcher, as well as a hunter and angler and stuff. And so we just love to see what's out there.
See and hear.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, we like to hear that turkey gobble, but boy, when the birds light up and begin singing when you're out there turkey hunting, it's pretty darn hard to not appreciate all that New Hampshire offers and all this wildlife offers to fellow sportswomen and men who are hunters, fishermen, and trappers.
Yeah, there's just so much out there, and I've heard a lot of dawn choruses, as those are called in the spring, whether I was turkey hunting or doing bird surveys as part of a research project. I've heard a lot of those, and those are precious moments.
So tell us about this bill, and where does it stand, and what do we need to do?
Yeah, so it's
and what's it going to bring to New Hampshire?
It's Recovering America's Wildlife Act. This is the culmination of work,
decades
work, but in the past 5 years, in earnest, folks have been working on this what is called Recovering America's Wildlife Act. It is the current iteration of this completing the wildlife funding package. It would bring $1.4 billion annually for all states and territories. And then in this bill, it's fabulous. There's finally money in there that is available to the tribal nations, the tribes, indigenous folks of the U.S. So it completes this puzzle of bringing the
reaching all corners of America.
Absolutely. And here in New Hampshire, it starts off at about 7 million. It's kind of ratcheted up and kind of up about 10 after 10 plus.
Out of a $20-something million budget here at Fishing Game, right? 24 million, I think, something like that. So that would be a pretty big.
That would be big. And if you remember, you probably saw me in there in the early days licking envelopes with our volunteer, trying to raise money for the non-game program by doing direct mail appeal. And we have a tremendous number of people who have funded,
Volunteer, over the years, over the decades now.
and then took out the checkbook and wrote to the 9-game program, so that Fishing Game had that program. Everybody buys a moose plate, and then some federal funds started coming in 2000. But they've allowed us to bring back a number of species: Carner blue butterflies, roseate terns, piping plovers. I'm trying to think of who else is in that whole mix that were not here. Least terns. Before we had some funding to go towards endangered species restoration, but we want to be able to get to the species and prevent them.
Right.
To get it, you don't want to have to like.
An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. We know that.
Absolutely.
So here is the ounces of prevention. 7 million ounces of prevention here. Yeah. Nice.
So, currently, I mean, when I left the 9-game program, between our donations and our moose plate funds, we got about, around 400,000 from that. And then, another, like, kind of double that from what is called the State Wildlife Grants program.
But actually, these fundings, once it goes to Fish and Game, it supports the whole agency, really.
Oh yeah, the whole agency.
I mean, somebody's got to keep the lights on. Right now, it's been the hunters and fishermen and trappers keeping the lights on. Guess what? This will help keep the lights on at New Hampshire Fish and Game.
Absolutely. And just broaden out those partnerships, because we have great partnersons with Nature Conservancy, New Hampshire Audubon.
They've carried a lot of the I've worked with them for years.
We've been funding positions over there for the entire time I was here, and still are. We rely on their expertise and
we see how it's worked. We've got some 80 eagle pairs in New Hampshire, a couple dozen falcons now, and ospreys like we've never had before. It's all worked.
It has,
but it takes work to make it work.
It does, and it takes funding to make it work.
Right.
The tern restoration that we've done with the Audubon and Parks, and now the Shoals Marine Lab out. That's a lot to run an offshore Seabird Restoration project like that.
And gone from a dozen pair of terns to
we had
3,000.
We had 0 the first year. 5 pairs set up in these decoys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I started with Diane DeLuca on Great Bay, we would go around and find a few pairs, a dozen or so.
Over there.
But you had to find them.
Right. You did, and now this
not so hard to find anymore.
No. There's over 3,000 pairs.
Nice. So all this work has paid off right here in New Hampshire.
It has.
And if we're going to continue the forward progress, it needs to be funded.
The changes are happening so rapidly now. We have the threat of a changing climate. There's just, in addition to habitat, loss, the things we think about, and we need to keep pace with. We have the formula. We know what we need to do to conserve the wildlife that we share this space with, and this Recovering America's Wildlife Act is the hope for the hopeful point of saying we know how to do this. We need the funding to do this, and we can prevent the emergency room. We had to bring Carner blue butterflies back from New York State into here, start raising into captivity, releasing them in the wild.
A lot of extra work.
And
let's
then,
keep them.
Yeah, and then you get.
So where's the bill at right now, and do we have support for it in the Congress?
In New Hampshire, our 2 members of Congress, both representatives, our 2 senators are just great supporters and champions.
And it's both sides of the aisle across the country, really.
All years that we've been working on this, whenever we're talking to, we in New Hampshire, we appreciate our wildlife, and so it is a bipartisan. It's a bipartisan issue. Everybody wants to conserve wildlife. Everybody appreciates wildlife, and we've had great support. And we currently have great support by our senators and representatives. And
so what needs to happen in the next few weeks?
Here's what needs to happen.
Has it passed the House already, or the Senate?
Passed the House.
So it's
passed
gone.
The House back in the summer.
Okay.
It passed through the Environment and Public Works Committee in the Senate.
Okay.
So it just needs to go to the floor in the Senate. So we need to get. The attention of the leadership in Congress, and say this thing just needs to get down to the floor for a vote.
Get her done.
And it's the elections, when they come back, the elections will be over. nobody's got to go back home and worry. It's over. It's time to get back down to work and do what they can, because time will run out. Because in December, that's the end of this Congress. So
Right.
This is a time we need to get it done now. What can you do? You can, first of all, thank your New Hampshire representatives and senators for supporting this now. Ask them to do what they can to help the leadership get this to the floor for a vote. We want this, and we need it to happen now. And that's what you could do to help. Talk to your friends and neighbors. And
We got 2 months to get it across the line.
Yeah.
Pitch in. Everybody needs to pitch in and help move this across the line right now.
Yeah. And if you're catching us on National Wildlife Federation's channels, and we could send this to you, Eric, we're going to do a rally. It's going to be a combined virtual. So
Okay.
some people will be, on computers, and some of us I'm going to be down there in front of the Capitol.
Yep.
Not something a wildlife biologist thought they'd be doing, but
Hey,
so we're going.
we'll do whatever it needs to take to improve our fish and wildlife here in New Hampshire. We'll go where we need to go. We'll do what we need to do. And this is a job for all of us. You need to pitch in right now. Let's get this across the line.
Yeah.
All right, John.
And that's Recovering America's Wildlife Act. Let's get it like you say. And Eric, I appreciate everything you do for New Hampshire's wildlife.
Hey, I enjoy every minute of it. Thank you very much, John. This is wildlife biologist Eric Orr for What's Wild in New Hampshire.